Hi, everyone. Welcome to the last session of the Anti-Racism Summer Series presented by IDI, and this one is especially presented by BMSA. We are so excited to have you all here with us, and we hope you learned something new, whether it be from either our sections that we're having, the past, present, and future, or just in general about being anti-racist. My name is Nicole Lang, and I'm a rising senior, and I'm also this year's treasurer for BMSA. And I'm also going to allow the rest of my exec to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone. My name is Steve Lawrence, and I am the president of the Board of Multicultural on Student Affairs. My majors are global studies, political science, and my minor is Spanish. And I'm happy that all of you are joining on this call. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Jolson Rodriguez. I will be the vice president of BMSA this uprising year. I am a public service and global studies double major with a minor in women and gender studies. And I'm beyond blessed to be a part of this exec and to be part of these amazing experiences. So yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Alicia. I am a rising senior. I am a political science and global studies double major, and I am, what was the other thing we say? I am really excited to have to be here and like get to inform you all. Also, I'm secretary. Sorry.
Thank you all. You guys are free to turn off your cameras, and we're gonna get into what the purpose of this forum is today. So we're really going to try to look at what students, faculty, and staff have done to promote anti-racism and as student activists or faculty activists, et cetera, et cetera. When we look into the past, we want to see what has been done, what impact has been made, and let's see what else continues when we go into the present, not the resident, of what's actually happening now and how students are actually feeling. And then we want to more work towards the future and see what initiatives we can do as BMSA or what other people can do as well, even as students. So what tonight looks like, as I said before, we're going to be looking first at our past, then at our present, and also then at our future to see what we can do as PC. So to start off in the past, we want to introduce our three panelists today. Tonight we have with us Dean Wanda Ingram, Pedro Alemán, and Adriel Antoine. Hello. Thank you for joining us today. So we're going to be asking a few questions during this section, and we want your open, honest answer about all of them from your experience as both a student and if you're faculty, as a faculty member as well. So looking into the past, what was your experience like as a student of color at PC, and what were the positives and negatives of that experience?
All right, I've been told that I'm going to go first. So I'm Dr. Wanda Johnson Ingram. I am the Senior Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies, the Freshman Class Dean, and I also oversee the Multicultural Student Success Program, which includes the Martin Luther King Scholarship. When I heard the question, which I thought was a great one, for me, I realized this is not a very easy one for me to answer. I'm the oldest one in the group, which means I have connections from way back when. In 1971, I was accepted into Providence College as an MLK scholar and a chemistry major. It was the first year that Providence College actually went co-ed, and I entered PC with a lot of expectations. There were about 270 women that were accepted, and there were only 12 women of color. And we all easily fit in Aquinas Hall. So 2 to a room, 1 to a room. It was really great that part. Reactions to us being on campus were anything but clear and simple. The circumstances regarding our presence, but we never really knew half the time if we had weird interactions with people, whether or not it was because you were a woman or was the color of your skin, or maybe the person was just having a bad day. So it was always kind of up in the air in a lot of cases. But the implementation of the MLK scholarship attracted a lot of minority students, and the school-going co-ed really kind of made a monumental impression on PC. So as MLK scholars, we knew that we were many people who were responsible for our applying to PC, our guidance counselors, everybody you can think of, and being accepted. It was a great thing. And it took many more people and resources to help us be successful. We were encouraged to take advantage of opportunities, get to know as many people as we could, and not to let fear and anxiety keep us from learning from one another. And I think that's one of the most important things that I hope that you get from what I'm saying. There were so few of us, I think there were less than 40 people of color on campus, that we didn't care if you bounced a basketball, you had a scholarship, you didn't have a scholarship. We were all together in this. We were proud of our heritage, our cultures, our histories, our forefathers, our foremothers' accomplishments. The real success came with the freedom of discovery. So finding out who you were, what affirmed you, and what made you happy. Even though we were small in numbers, as the saying goes, we were tight. We all were members of Afro-Am. Even if you were the only student of color in another organization, you knew we had your back if you had any problems. We made that perfectly clear on several occasions, which I won't go into. We were small, but very outspoken. We even published a Black supplement as part of the COW for Black History Month. Believe it or not, I believe Black History Month started around this 1970, I think so we were just a year into it. Key people like Dr. Francis P. McKay and Father Mars, they were part of the original group that started the MLK Scholarship and have since passed, but they were there the first day we arrived in the summer of 1971 for our mandatory summer bridge program. And for many of us, including yours truly, we felt insulted that we had to attend a bridge program, and it felt that it's going to be reflecting on our intelligence. But we soon learned that its purpose was not about academics. We had great grades in high school, all of us, but developing social support and strong ties with one another was key. Other associations and friendships that developed at a later time during those first 4 years also withstood the test of time. Walesi Hester, who came back as Dr. Walesi Kamijan, as the first dean of the Balfour Center, and many others who have passed away, Dr. Robert Hamlin, Lionel Jenkins, class of 1958, who was an extraordinary athlete and got many of us involved in civil rights. Dr. Kenneth Walker, who recently passed, class of 57, who supported all of us as athletes, educators. He even started an actual scholarship in the education department. And he was also one of my doctoral professors at another institution. All the males on campus prior to our entering PC also had some great ideas that they were going to be our older brothers. Me being the oldest one in my family, and let's just say that that one didn't go too well for some of them, but I digress. Having so many people, key people for us, made a difference and resulted in our staying in touch with many of them down through the years. The saying, "It takes a village," was truly the case. And the transition for the first year of women at Providence College has been phenomenal, and it's so wonderful to see so many on campus now. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I guess it's my turn. My name is Pedro Alemán Perfecto. I'm from the class of 2017 with majors in political science and sociology and a minor in Black studies. And I'm from San Diego, California, so I'm currently in Pacific time right now. I guess for me, the thing that something completely different was I'm a first generation college student, as well as being of Latino descent. So for me, it was a completely different experience. I never went to, I didn't experience PC before I went there. I didn't visit it. So for me, it was, a little bit different, and I didn't know what to expect really when I went to Providence. It was the first time me flying to school or taking the plane. So for me, it was completely different culture, different environment. Once I landed in Providence in, the first year, and it's something that got me thinking that the institution says, and, it's a turning point in my class where they said, this year is the most diverse class that we have ever had at PC. I don't know if that has happened to other classes, probably, after me, but it got me thinking of whether or not it really was, because I didn't see a lot of the people that look like me, coming from San Diego, a really diverse community, how it can reflect at Providence. Something that, that I really reflected on was that, how can we really make PC a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable environment for everyone. So it got me more involved into being a student leader and a student activist on campus. I did experience racism, I did experience discrimination at PC, whether it was through students, whether it was through, professors and microaggressions. So, those little things that, can really affect someone's experience. And I would have to be completely honest, my first year was not the best. I went through depression. I went through a lot of, a mental health diagnosis that I, was ready to move out of PC my first year. But I overcame that. I decided, to be a student leader. And something that I really, I guess, got me more motivated to stay was the connections that I was building with a lot of BIPOC students. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to stay. I joined a lot of organizations like Student Congress. I became an RA, but I also became part of BMSA. And that's something that I really enjoyed. And that's something that I want to say kind of saved me from staying at PC. I was in BMSA for 3 years, and then I became treasurer my junior year and then president my senior year. So in a way, I went through, you can say, a whole crisis at the beginning, and then, to student leader all the way until my senior year. And as a student of color at PC and as an activist, as first generation college students, you have so many layers that go into, your identity. So in a way, and as a queer student of color, that even in itself is something that I wasn't able to explore at PC. So for me, that, it was something a little bit, different and difficult rather than I was at here in San Diego. Well, I do have to say I was fortunate enough to have majors and professors that were able to help me in my experience and lighting me throughout my college careers. There's some that a lot of people don't really talk about was, how institutionally racism exists on campus. While there are so many great faculty members and so many great, people out there that are fighting the cause with you and who are allies, there's a lot of, as someone who's not an MLK scholar, it was a little bit difficult to manage, being with a group of students, having a dean that can really help you tailor yourself, your 4 years of college. So for me, it was a little bit hard to navigate that way. And just being as a student leader was, a little bit hard. There was transitions. I want to say that, I guess, my year, or, a lot of students in my year were really passionate about, social movements and social activism. And it was a year where, there was the 2016 election. So, it was a big change, in culture, in identity politics, with everyone on campus. So everyone, was trying to figure themselves out. And with BMSA, that's something that I really enjoyed and something that got me even more passionate about social movement and social activism, and as a student of color on campus, because it was a turning point where we really reflected on, like, who are we as an institution, who are we as a, student group, while, sometimes we didn't have the support as other organizations like Student Congress. I was in Student Congress, and there was a support of advisors and a support of other deans. BMSA did not have that. And now, fortunately, until recently, I believe they do. So in a way that we really need to, focus on, like, how do students of color need that, experience, and how can they manage these 4 years if they don't have that support in the administration. And it's something that, as someone who did not visit PC before going to college, and who has completely different, is part of the other end of the country, and, just as someone who identifies as a queer Latin first-gen college student, it was just, something that my experience was a little bit daunting at first, but, reflecting and joining these movements, these organizations is great. But then at the same time, it's like, how can we really empower not just us, but also, our allies and a lot of people who really need I want to say wake up in this environment. Because I do remember one, just really quick before I give it up to Adriel, one event where BMSA, it was our first, I think, major social movement, was we did a walk for solidarity, and more than 200 people, joined that walk, and it was something powerful. I believe it was early 2017 when that happened, and as I mentioned, more than 200 people joined. But throughout campus, while you had so many great supportive networks, there was, a lot of students screaming the N-word or screaming other things, and it's something like that we need to be reflective on how our experience as a student of color or a BIPOC student reflect, the institution itself, and how can we, manage and resolve so we can, move forward, as a culture. So.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adriel Antoine. I am alumni of class of 2018. I was going to prepare something for this, but I think it's just best if I, went off the top of my head and I kind of spoke from the heart. It's kind of how I've always done it. So My experience as PC was pretty similar to Pedro's. I feel like there was a lot of things at PC that kind of, I don't know, maybe want to leave my freshman year as well. I think the one thing that helped me stay, similar to Pedro, with different organizations on campus, I think the first organization I can think of is Horizons. I'll always rep Horizons. It's one of the, like I did it 4 years. It's one of the things that kept me there. And it's one of the things that helped me build strong relationships with friends and some administrators as well. But aside from like those organizations that really kept me there and like helped me build those strong relationships, there was a lot of like, I guess, negativities that were there too. You know, piggybacking off what Pedro said, there was just an atmosphere at PC that kind of, I don't know, it made it uncomfortable for a lot of students of color, and myself. And I think that we had to kind of find solace in ourselves. You know, we really had to rely on ourselves to push through like different incidents on campus that were happening, whether it was a blackface, whether it was a swastika drawn on the door, or name 100 different of incidents that we've all like experienced at our 4 years at PC. And I think for me, like a lot of my experience at PC is coinciding with like my activism and trying to, I guess like Pedro said, using his words, wake up, trying to like wake people up from what was going on. And I think that the constant surprise that people were met with when we like told these stories and we allowed people to share their stories is something that me as a Black male, I didn't really understand, because, you know, Providence College isn't unique. I think when it comes to like racism and things like that, I think that it's something that everybody in America is struggling with. I think that to be so surprised that things were happening on the campus and like the way that things were being handled, especially in my earlier 2 years, it really was disheartening, because it kind of, it implicitly showed like where Providence College's focus was when it came to students of color and BIPOC on campus. And again, like us finding that solace in each other is what kept us there. You know, we really had to like counsel each other. Like there were so many times where I was up at like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, talking with students, and students were talking with me, and we were talking with each other, trying to like find solutions. And this is on top of all of our schoolwork. This is on top of all the different organizations that we were student leaders for, you know. So it's an experience that's almost a complete opposite of like our white counterparts, you know. Like there are so many times where people say like, oh, college is the best 4 years of your life, you know. And like there are so many different instances where you hear students say like, oh, PC was my best 4 years. It was the most amazing things that ever happened to me and things like that. And they can only speak about the positives. But I feel like for me and a lot of like my friends, or like my friends that I really hold dear to me, there's the negatives almost like balance out with the positives, you know. And I feel like a lot of my relationships at PC were built off of negative experiences. You know, it was built off of trauma from, like Pedro said, being called the N-word from McDermott and things like that while we're having a protest. You know, we're asking for, you know, us to be seen as students on campus, and the way that students react is, you know, calling us the N-word and screaming, telling us to shut up and things like that. You know, so I'm building stronger relationships with people that look like me on campus, and in that same vein, we're all bonding on the fact that we're not being seen and recognized and being, I guess, given the proper due that we are students. You know, we all pay the same tuition to go to PC. We all have access to the same resources. So our experiences should be similar. You know, if PC is the best 4 years that we want people to be, then it shouldn't just be for a certain group of people that fit a certain mold that PC has. You know, I think that being that it is a religious institution, I think it was always like surprising to me that anti-racism and like Christianity were like two opposing factors. The way that I grew up learning about Christianity, I feel like anti-racism is something that should go along with Christianity, you know, with the message that we're all taught, you know, that God created us all equal and he loves us all equally, you know, regardless of our creed, caste, color, whatever, you know. So it was always interesting that whenever the conversation of race and racism and things like that came up, like I felt like it was religion was a thing that was kind of, or like I guess PC's interpretation or some people's interpretation of religion is to them was the real like driving force of what was keeping us like, I guess, oppressed. Let me just use that one, just be straight up. It was keeping us oppressed and keeping us uncomfortable on that campus, you know. And it was always, it just didn't really it never really made sense to me. It still doesn't really make sense to me now. But I think that the reason why like I feel like I became as active as I was on campus was again because it was I just couldn't like remain silent no more. You know, I got tired of constantly hearing the same things happening where like, oh, this something happened to this student and it was handled in a certain way, and then something happened to this student, and like it's a pattern that I'm seeing happen over and over again. I'm just like, why is nobody doing something about this? Why are all these stories like going so quietly or either being swept under the rug or handled in such a minute way? So just like me, a bunch of my friends, people that I built really strong relationships with, we just kind of thought it was enough. And we every time that we kind of coupled these stories together, we were like, we have to tell somebody, you know, this isn't something that is going to remain silent no more. And I know a lot of people, like when I was a student, we were like, there was always a theme of like, oh, this is just one incident, you know, like, why are you guys reacting this way? And I think something that people fail to realize is that it's not one incident. It's incidents that's happening every single day, constantly on a daily basis to students every day. And, you know, like the same way that people are rioting and really mad about what happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, things like that. Again, it's not one incident. It's millions of incidents over time that build up. And after a while, it explodes, you know, and people don't usually see the work that happens behind the scenes and things like that. And as one of the people who was really behind the scenes, there was some progress made, but almost like double as much as like delays and lag work or just like busy work that was done to kind of, I guess, slow that progress from being made as well. So I guess like what I'm trying to say is like my experience, there's a lot of things that I did learn at PC. You know, there's a lot of things that PC helped me do in terms of like being a better leader and being a better advocate for other people. But I think that I shouldn't have had to suffer as much as I did in some aspects of my experience at PC just to become a leader, you know? Because like I said, there are people who, like my white counterparts, who were able to develop their leadership, develop great friendships, develop great experiences at PC, but that don't necessarily have that other side, you know? So that's just something that I always kept with me. You know, I feel like college should definitely be a place that reflects the world, but I don't think that college should necessarily be a place where those behaviors and those like actions were deemed as okay. And I think that PC not necessarily being as up forward and upfront about how not okay these actions were allowed it to persist, and it allowed it to like kind of seep into the culture of PC. And it's kind of why we're here today. It's the reason why there's 197 people in this call right now. You know, it's because we're trying to change that culture. You know, we're trying to let people know that this isn't okay. And I think that for a cultural change like that to happen, it's going to take more than just 5, 6, 7, 8 people. You know, it's going to take literally how many, like 3,700 students around our PC. There's probably a couple hundred faculty members, so let's bring it up to 4,000. It's going to take every single faculty, admin, student, everybody who's a part of the PC community to change that culture. And I think that's like one of the things also that's like kept bringing me back to these conversations at PC, because yeah, I know that I had my 4 years. I graduated 2 years ago, and you know, people could ask like, why do you still care? You know, you're graduating, you're on to different things, but it's because like I still have so many relationships with students and faculty and staff at PC that I'm still hearing about these things that even when I graduated, things that I thought that were resolved are still happening. You know, so it's in some parts it's troubling for me to like know that there are people that I care about who are still there, that are still experiencing the stuff that I experienced, because I was supposed to be the one who experienced these things, like me and my people who were in my 18 class, so that people in the 19, 20, 21 and so on wouldn't necessarily have to experience it as much. And has some things gone better? Yes, but on what scale? You know, like how, like, I don't know, I've always felt like PC was maybe like 20 or 30 years behind. So if things have gone better a little bit, then it's still like 15, 25 years to catch up, you know? So I just feel like, again, this is something that has to be collective. And I feel as though, especially when I was a student, there were some pieces of me that felt like some students or some people weren't as committed to the movement as they should have been. You know, it was something that like, oh, let's go to a protest, or let's not even go to a protest. Let's say, oh, this is something really great that you're doing. And like, that was their only effort to kind of like stop racism at PC, you know, instead of like being again on that forefront. And there are so many other ways to be involved in the movement. It's not just a protest, but I feel like if you're in the classroom, you're in the dorm rooms, you are at a party at PC, and you're experiencing this behavior, then you should speak up and say something about it. You know, you should be able to tell somebody that, hey, that's not okay. Like, you can't say this word. You can't say this thing about these like groups of people. And I think that there wasn't enough of that at PC, which is again why I think that like that culture has been so ingrained into like what PC has been become to know. And I know that I think what 2 years ago or 3 years ago they were ranked like the #1 school for like least like race and class interactions, you know. And it's like it's things like that that I feel should have been a wake-up call, you know, for PC. And I think that this is something that I might not be aware of, but I feel like when it comes to a lot of campuses and things like that have been pretty proactive with saying like, oh, like Black Lives Matter, you know, and like going on to that like bandwagon of other like organizations saying Black Lives Matter now. And I feel like this is something that should have like been happening, you know, like Black Lives Matter is something that should have already been a part of PC's culture if they were truly this Christian Catholic university that they claim to be, you know, because I feel like within that realm of teaching has to do with love. It has to do with care. It has to do with, you know, compassion. And hearing about the stories that some of these students experiences, like myself and my friends and things like that, other students at PC, like it should have called everybody to the table to be like, how can we make this better? And I feel like it hasn't. So hopefully we can get to a place where we can get all 4,000 students, faculty and staff together on the same accord. But until we get to that point, I feel like we still have a lot of work to go, a lot of work to do, because it's okay for, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's okay, but it's just like, I don't know how to say this last part that I'm saying, but it's frustrating when only some people really care about something, when it should be something that the whole community should care about. Because we all hear the messages that come out of PC. You know, we all hear the us, we, them together, Friar family. We all get the emails from administrators about, you know, how certain Catholic person said that we all should love each other after an incident happens, but then nothing really happens as a collective, you know. And I think that's the message that I kind of want to hit home, is that it needs to be a collective effort. It can't just be, even like the 200 people, this is great that there's this many people, but where's everybody else, you know? Like while we're here at this meeting right now, there's thousands of people, a part of the PC community, who aren't here. And I'm sure there's some people who have little conflicts in the schedule like that, but there are a lot of people that don't even know this is happening. You know, there are a lot of people that could care less about this. And I think like that's the problem, I think, with PC. There's so many people who are so oblivious to the problems that students of color, people of color, that diverse students in general are going through. And I think that until we reach that group of people, that audience, then this problem will persist.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our panelists for answering the first question. That's something, all the experiences that we're told, that's something I can definitely relate to. So even in the present day, I've experienced, especially my freshman year, the hardships of going to a school where you don't see people that look like you. And until you do, then you feel more empowered to do more student activist stuff, such as joining BMSA, Asian AM, etc. So I'm happy that we've all shared that same experience. All right, so for our second question, we have any advice you have for our current students? What advice do you have for students who want to be activists at PC?
All right, well, reflecting on my past experiences and talking about PC, it's my hope that our students find mentors and anchors and proteges that can kind of help them get through some of this craziness. Because what saddens me the most is that the same stuff, and I'm cleaning up the word, that we went through when there were so few of us on the campus are the same things I hear over and over and over again. And our society is part of the problem as well. And it's a shame that these situations are kind of tantamount to what's going on out there in the real world as well. People can't even get people to wear masks, for God's sake, and we know that people are going to end up dying as a result of it. But it's one of those, we're a country that really does need to be overhauled, because we're just circling the drain in this case, and that's not a good thing. The word activist is defined as a person who campaigns to bring about political or social change, and I think that that's one of the things that's important for a lot of us to kind of realize, is that you have to believe in yourself. You can't take on the whole world. You have to focus on one piece of it, get your game face on. And if you're not sure how to go about it, I mean, talk with somebody to try to help move a few of those pebbles. We're not asking folks to move mountains. And this is some of the stuff that I end up saying to folks all the time on campus. I came back because even though we had greater numbers, we still had some of the same BS going on campus. And it hasn't gotten any better in a lot of ways. And I wonder sometimes when I hear folks talk about, well, we have more numbers of students of color, and you wonder if they're smoking something other than a cigarette, because numbers don't mean a thing if you don't treat folks the right way. So I'm still in organizations that I'm the only one that looks like me on campus, which is not a good sign. When students and folks end up having difficulties or whatever, I find I end up having to slip to my old ways, the way we were on campus, which is quite, let's just say, a little more aggressive than what I find that some students are these days. And I try not to be that way, but there are times when I would rather intimidate somebody just to get their attention, to make it a teaching moment for them to understand that, yes, I am an educator. Yes, I have a certain number of degrees, but now that I've got your attention, maybe you shouldn't have said, or you shouldn't have done X, Y, or Z. And the point of throwing everybody in the same group all the time and making assumptions is something that I find I spend more time trying to undo, because folks will assume that because you look the way you do or the way you're dressed or whatever, that it reflects an entire race. And trying to undo those kinds of things has just been frustrating at times, even for myself. But I tell students when they come in and they're not sure how things have gone with dynamics with regards to a professor who maybe will expect a student to speak for their entire race, which just goes up one side and down the other with me. But it happens quite often. I get a lot of students that will come in and talk about it. I tell students to always have some key phrases ready at the quick, because there's certain things that sometimes you're going to have to say to someone to make them stop, or you need to come and talk with folks like myself and others so that we can call them out on it, even if it's not necessarily that one particular student who worries obviously about retribution and whatever, but brainstorming with friends on what they can say and what they can do. Talking about it is also helpful too. Discomfort is two sides. A professor can also be just as uncomfortable as a student, as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's important at times that maybe that's what we need to do more of, because from my generation, we made people uncomfortable and we were able to initiate and get some change. Being an activist is just getting for folks to understand how powerful words can be, how hurtful actions and words can be, educating folks all the time. We keep asking the same questions. Why do we have to do it? I mean, it's like saying, well, why do all the Black folks sit in the cafeteria together? I heard that all 4 years I was on campus, and there weren't that many of us. And I always threw it back as to, well, why are all you white folks sitting together? Why don't you come over and join us at the table? So I know we're not all going to be Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King or one of my legends, of course, John Lewis, but we're going to have to take things one person, one situation at a time, talk as much as we can about it, and make good trouble. I don't think we would have called it good trouble back in my day, and I'm sure some of the powers that be would not have called it good trouble, but I think that's the direction we're going to have to end up going in to get people to understand that we can't keep treating people this way, and we're going to have to do something about it. I think we're starting on the right foot, because there are a lot more people that have joined in reference to folks who don't look like us, who are starting to get it a little bit, but we still got a long ways to go. It's going to take some time. Thank you.
I just want to also piggyback from what Dean Ingram said. It's, completely true with all this situation. Like, it takes one step at a time. And unfortunately, there's so many incidents that's going to happen in PC, whether we try to avoid it or not. And it's sadly, that's right now our atmosphere. And, it hasn't changed since the 70s, 80s, and it's still continuing up to this date, and until I graduated 3 years ago, and it's continuing 3 years ago. And it's continuing now. And it's something, as activists, you have so many different, you want to say personalities when it comes to activists, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, or you're in between. You have so many things to contribute, your identity. And that's something that I really enjoyed with my experience in being PC, where, we can be talking about racism and talking and, activating and going to sit-ins at Father Shanley's office, and, doing protests and doing a peaceful walkthrough, and then going to talking about undocumented students and, you know, advising for a dean for undocumented students. So you have so many different, you know, personalities and anything that's really can bring us together. And that's something that I really, really want to focus is how we as, you know, as a group of students and as a group of, you know, as a collective, how can we, you know, learn from ourselves and then learn from others. And then how can we, you know, tailor that into being you know, an activist on campus, because we need a lot of emotional support. And it's something as an activist and as a BIPOC, we have so many, as I said before, so many different layers, whether you're queer, whether you're Latino, whether you're Black, whether you're first gen or low income, like there's so many different layers. And as some that qualify me to be in those layers, you know, we need that emotional support because there's so much trauma that has, you know, that I've still experienced from being an activist and student leader on campus, that maybe there's students that right now are dealing through that. And it doesn't go away, unfortunately. And as you know, I still go through that trauma. Like right after PC, I did my master's at USF in San Francisco, and it's completely different culture. It's still that Catholic value, but at the same time, it was so, I don't want to say it was perfect, but it was so progressive in a way where, you know, they had to follow these, you know, different, I don't want to say guidelines, but they were so open-minded to the way, how are we as an activist, how can we learn from each other, you know. And because that emotional stress is still something that we really need that still affects us after graduation. And that's something that I want to really, you know, emphasize is self-care. You know, it's 4 years of college, but it goes into the future, so yeah.
So I agree wholeheartedly with what Pedro said. So I would say my advice is, one, think macro. So think about like what the students after you are going to like be building off of what you do. Like documentation is really important. Building plans that isn't just within your 4 years, or if you started your activism as a junior or senior, that isn't in the scope of your 1 or 2 years. Think about what students 10 years from now will be building off of what you're doing now. So think about how you're going to document things. Think about how you're going to transfer knowledge. Think about how you can have events like this where people from the past, present, and future can all be in one space, so that these stories and these movements and things like that aren't forgotten, because that's something that happened a lot before when I was a student. A lot of people like came when we first started doing activism, like a lot of alumni came, were like, oh, we did this 25 years ago. Like, oh, we wrote demands 30 years ago. We did this protest 25 years ago, you know. So and I didn't even know about that myself. So like, make sure that whatever you're doing is written down somewhere, it's documented, whether it's from the media of the news, whether it's in a folder that you share people on, whatever it is, document it. Next is to take care of yourself. That's when, like what Pedro said was really true. Like I previously said, I was up at 3, 4 in the morning sometimes and having class at 8:30 in the morning, having exams, all those different things. I was a part of like 6, 7, 8 different organizations. And I feel like by the time it was my senior year, I was exhausted. Like I was beyond fatigued. And I feel like I'm still recovering from that fatigue because I went to go get my master's right afterwards. So I didn't even get like a gap year. I went right back to school. So it's so important for you to take care of yourself as an activist, as a student in general. But when you're dealing with all this trauma so constantly as activists, so many people are going towards you. So many people are going to you for these things. So you're constantly reliving the traumas of not only your own experiences, but the experiences of others. So you have to be able to find some type of way to find your peace and your happiness, wherever that may be, whether it's off campus and doing something with your friends so you can just completely take your mind off of things, or whatever you find your peace in doing. Just make sure that you take care of yourself. Make sure you take that time to make sure you're okay, because if you're not okay, then you can't help others. You know, you can't help them effectively. So, and always remember too that you're a student also. Your success matters at Providence College. So don't sacrifice your future or don't sacrifice your opportunities because of what you experience at that school. I would say like thrive and be successful in spite of what you're experiencing at Providence College. Don't let what you experience at Providence College define who you are. Because if you allow what's happening there to like take over your opportunities, your grades and things like that, then now you're going to be suffering continuously based off what you're not able to do because of how how you attended Providence College. So just make sure that you're focusing on yourself as much as you're focusing on the movement, and try not to let that get away from you. And there was one more thing I was going to say that I'm forgetting. Dang, I'm forgetting it. But there was definitely one more thing that I had. Just give me one more second. Yeah, I guess I forgot it. But just again, I'll keep with those two for now. Take care of yourselves and document things. That's always really important. Make sure that people after you can know what's going on and continue what you're doing. Oh, apply pressure. That was the third thing. Apply pressure. Do not think that Providence College can silence you from whatever you say in the media, or don't think, oh, I'm scared if I say this thing in front of the news that PC is going to do something to me, or if I'm an RA, you know, like residence life is going to do this. Apply pressure. That's like the one thing that you have, like, apply pressure. Do not take your foot off the pedal, because if you do, that's what they're waiting for you to do. If you let off, if you don't apply this pressure, then they're going to let, the next thing you know, you graduate and that information that you had could be gone. And then now people are going to have to restart after that. So just make sure that whatever y'all are doing, activists, BMSA, everybody who's in this call who's thinking about being an activist, just keep going, you know, do not stop. Take care of yourselves, of course, but just keep applying pressure, you know. The media is your friend. I know a bunch of y'all have Twitter, y'all have Instagram. There's that Black Out PC page on Instagram, things like that. Keep sharing your stories, keep applying pressure, keep plastering this stuff everywhere, because the theme that I talked about before is that these things get handled so quietly under the rug sometimes that like people don't know about it. So if you put it on your social media, if you do a project in school and it's surface around this, if you put up posters on campus that are obviously approved by, you know, student activities, things like that, if you plaster these things everywhere and apply this pressure, then Providence College has to respond. You know, they can't ignore it anymore. They can't just wait and tiptoe their feet around or wait until other Big East schools do something first. No, if you keep applying that pressure, then they're gonna have to do something. So just keep applying that pressure, please. Apply that pressure, take care of yourselves, and then document everything. Whatever interactions you have with a faculty member, if you believe that it was like racist or sexist, homophobic, XYZ, write it down. This is the day that it happened, this is the time that it happened, this is who it was, and this is what was said. So that when you're trying to remember it 2 months later to put it onto a page that's asking for stories, you can remember exactly what happened, and there isn't that he said, she said type of thing.
Thank you so much to everyone who shared their advice. I can definitely say that the advice shared is something I also carry. And if I wanted to add a piece of advice, I would say, if you are part of a club or organization, make a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan of what you want to accomplish, so that way your club and organization can continue working on what you already have set up. Thank you again to our panelists for sharing their own stories and giving advice to our current students, faculty, staff, etc. And now I would like to invite Alicia onto screen.
Hi. Yeah, just kind of echoing Nicole, like, thank you so much again to the panelists for sharing and for being so honest and candid about everything, because, you know, that's very much needed. And I feel like now more than ever, you know, like this is the time for students to just really share like what's going on, because I feel like there tends to be a lot of instances in which like unless you see something that's like very blatant and obvious, it's very easy for a lot of folks to think that like there isn't really much going on. But yeah, and so now at this point, we're kind of going to transition now more to like kind of student experiences. So what we're going to be doing basically is, so the chat option and the Q&A function will be available. So anybody who feels like just sharing like kind of anything that resonated with them from like what the panelists shared, or anybody who wants to just share their experiences on campus, feel free to do so now. And yeah.
So I will actually take over while everyone is using the Q&A. So either type in your story there, just to reiterate what Alicia was saying. Type in your stories there. If not, say you want to share. Steve Lawrence, our president, is actually going to read them out loud. Obviously, you can do it anonymously. You can, we'll keep them all anonymous, whatever Steve reads out loud. But kind of diving in, so just to give people that time, I will actually be sharing my story. So I want to quickly thank the panelists a lot for sharing your experience. And I know with a lot of things have been going on through social media outlets and such and things like that, current students are much more, open to be sharing these kind of stories. So starting with me, like I said, I'm a rising senior. I actually transferred into PC my sophomore year. So technically I only have 2 years under my belt, now 2.5, even though it feels like it's been 10 years. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a long 2.5 years. I transferred from UMass Lowell, so a very public, very large school, and I transferred into a very private Catholic Dominican college, where the diversity rate went from continuously seeing people who either look like me or who just I knew, represented that diversity mark for UMass Lowell. But then I come to this school and it was like the complete turnaround. But regardless, I really tried to make the best of it. I think just to reiterate what other panelists have said before, it turns into a job. Like your identity literally turns into a job. It's unfortunate. It's not something I ever expected. I was grateful enough and, thankful enough to really get private Catholic institution education when I was younger. So I kind of knew the basics, but oh my goodness, I'll say it's not the same. It is not the same in higher education. I do feel like my identity is always on the forefront. I feel like I can never walk into a room and really feel almost connected to everyone. I think that's obviously for the same for a lot of us here, but I know for me specifically, I mean, I know when our panelist Pedro was talking, being, having to openly, come out. Like, I mean, as I am the president of Shepherd this uprising senior year, I'm an openly queer person. I'm Latin background, you know what I mean? So having to step into every room and carry those identities with me, people notice it first before I even notice it myself. And that's when the quick judgment, that's when the quick eye glares, that's when the quick almost expertise kind of gets thrown on top of me. Being in Shepherd, being in BMSA has been probably the best things of my life, but it's also been the most heaviest baggage I've been carrying being in college. Not only are we here as students, but we're also here to just show representation, to show that if I can do it, someone else out there can do the same thing. It's one of those things where you don't realize until, you're coming into your senior year. You don't realize that until someone who comes up to you and saying, hey, Jolson, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I'm actually inspiring me to do the same thing. You don't realize how much of that package you're carrying with you, how heavy it really is until someone or something happens like that. I'm not going to say every story is the same. It's not. I'm not saying my story has been easy. It has definitely not been. But I personally choose not to really dive deep into the negatives, because if I do, I know my personal self, it's not going to end well. I choose to continuously fighting and to continuously representing who I stand for, what others stand for, and just try to create that kind of community. Is it easy? No, not at all. But here we are doing what we're doing. My only concern, and then we'll definitely start sharing other people's stories if you want to start dropping them in the chat, is that the fact that I, as a queer identifying Latin man, have to continuously out myself to prove a point, to continuously have to come into this camera and to these rooms and to these spaces at Providence College to say, hey, we exist. Queer students of color exist. We're here. And that's only for the queer and people of color community. For the BPOC, for the BPOC, immigration policy. There's this thing called intersectionality that I think PC just realized existed, even though it's been existing our whole lives. And now they want to touch upon it, but regardless, here we are fighting for what we do. And yeah, so with that said, we're gonna start using the chat feature and open this room up for students, current students who would like to share their stories. Steve, would you like to take it away?
Hello, everyone. Good night again. As of right now, we have not seen stories yet, but however, I would like to share. I'd like to share some of my stories I had in PC. This one's actually very recent. This happened to me in the fall. I was racially profiled in Ray. at one time, as you know, as people know me, at the time I was in BOP. I was in BOP being sales and media club. So of course, due to that, I have to put up flyers in Ray. So I have asked one of the employees there, may I please put up flyers? And the person told me, "I'll go towards the back and the other side of Ray, where people don't usually like. It's not the main entrance for you to walk in. For those who are familiar with Ray, to put them up." So I went. I did. I put them up. I put them up. So I put up my flyers. And next, you know, one of their employees stopped me. I was like, "Why are you trying to sneak in?" And I was like, "I'm not trying to sneak in. I am putting up flyers, and I didn't leave the premises. I stayed in that section." She told me that I saw you on the camera. Leave it on the premises, but I told her no, I was here. Unfortunately, there was another black man. He walked past me and he went out. I mean, he went in. He passed me to come in. Where I was, the exit, like he come in that a person come in in the door. And the employee thought that that guy was me. And we looked totally different. However, that employee insisted that I sneaked in, and she forced me to leave the premises. I was very upset. I was very disheartened because at the time I was a junior, and like not to put boast on things, but I'm usually when I'm very involved on campus. Usually will people will see me putting up posters. And last time I checked, we are allowed to put up posters in Ray. And it was very just like took him back at the fact that like you thought that I was this person, but actually I'm not, and we do not look the same. Size are different, height is there, everything is different. So that goes to shows the ignorance of a PC, and also to show the insight of how and a person of color go through in their daily lives of a PC. So enough of my story. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna go into the questions. We're going up for the I'll go into the questions here. I see we have a lot of questions here, and I will turn it over to Nicole.
Hi. So I actually can't see the questions. If Jolson, you want to read the story that I see was shared in the chat, that would be a plus.
Yes, I got you. Sorry, guys. So webinar is something we're all learning. Welcome to virtual reality. So we do have a story that I would like to share. Obviously, it's anonymous, but a person wrote that they are a rising senior at PC and grew up in a predominantly white town. And it's crazy because they didn't realize how isolated it felt to be on campus as a Black and Indigenous person of color. And especially for the first 2 years going abroad, others started sharing their experiences, and then they thought, wow, how did I survive the last 2 years? Now, as they prepare to come back, they're nervous. They didn't have a strong, the Black and Indigenous people of color community support system before, and now they feel unprepared and isolated all over again. But they are grateful that alumni and our BMSA exec is here to kind of candidly share our stories. So that's one story. We also have another one. I don't mind reading it if anybody else wants to take over. If not, we do have, let's see. Just to buy quick time, like I said, please use the Q&A function if you would like to just either say raise hand or something. We as are kind of controllers of this conversation. We are allowed to unmute your lines. So if you feel comfortable enough sharing your story live, please feel free to do so. That's the whole point of this kind of open dialogue. Very informal, but that's the point. We want to create this kind of connection and transparency with everyone here. So like I said, please feel free to go into the Q&A and just either type in raise hand or something, and we'll go through the participants to unmute your line so you can share that story. Regardless, we do, like I said, we do have one here. So this is another person. They've heard stories and a fight for representation, equality, and justice on campus that were both spearheaded by faculty, staff, and students. Some of their colleagues have talked about doing an archive of some sort, and they really feel like, you know, kind of what changes can happen. Why are we having these conversations sort of with the same people? I've actually read through the comments while, you know, others were talking, and it's like, what? There's only 100, you know, there's a lot of participants here, and it's always like, are these the same people? And that's not all PC. That's not all of the population at Providence College. And they're right, it's not. So what are some of the things that we want to do? And that's the important part. Let's see. We'll probably give you all a couple minutes to just, again, type in the Q&A sections. If you have a story to share, feel free to. We'll, like I said, we'll unmute you and you can share that like that. But we'll give you all a minute or two to look it over while we get in more stories.
So while everybody is typing up their stories, if they want to, I'm just going to go over my story really quick. I basically grew up in a predominantly white town and went to a predominantly white high school. I could probably count all of the BIPOC students on my hand if I really wanted to, especially the Asian students. And then coming to PC where there were even less Asian students, I was honestly very surprised just because one of my goals coming to college was kind of be in a more diverse community, which I guess kind of contradicts why I went to PC, but at the same time, I feel like my experiences at PC have really built me to be the person who I am today. I couldn't imagine myself in high school speaking to a crowd of 200 people. I mean, this is crazy to me. I used to be such an introvert, and now I am here talking to all you guys because I have gone through all the hardships of not seeing people who have looked like me, but taking that and learning that, hey, it's okay to be myself. It's okay to be an Asian American. It's okay to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable in certain situations and really growing from that. So through that, I have really gone through my homesickness as a freshman and kind of really missing home, and then really taking that and seeing how can I apply that to PC and grow out of that and learn how to be more comfortable with being myself with other people. Because I used to just stay in my dorm all day. Especially that first semester, I did not really talk to anybody. I really just stayed to myself and my one roommate. But after second semester, I really grew from that, and I joined orientation where I was able to help represent other students and really talk to them and guide them because I realized I needed that and I wanted to be that person for somebody else. So hopefully I can continue to do that. I'm also a Prior Foundation mentor, so I can help continue that as well. And I think being that person and being that activist who can stand up for others and just really being there for others will change the student body overall. Even if it's just seeing somebody that looks like you in the crowd, you just feel a little bit more comfort in what's going on.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Nicole. And Jolson and Steve. I guess I'll share mine, just to make it fair. um, but yeah, so for those of you who may know me, I'm actually from Providence, so I've grown up here my entire life. So it was definitely an interesting experience coming into PC, just because you know, like, I never left my hometown, but the demographics are definitely like not at all representative of like Providence as a whole. Um, so it's definitely it was a huge adjustment, just like kind of finding my place on campus. I was very fortunate. I was I think it was Pedro who mentioned it earlier. I did come in as a multicultural scholarship recipient. So through that, I immediately was welcomed on campus through the transitions program, which is actually, I think it started today. Truly, just really helped for me personally, just like meeting people on campus who looked like me and like starting to like build community. Um, but it definitely came with its challenges. I throughout my entire time at PC, I have worked at least a job. Some, but most of the time I've worked two jobs. So it was definitely an adjustment, especially just thinking about how like socioeconomic wise, like as someone who's like lower income and first gen, it was a lot to take in, knowing that like my peers didn't have the same struggles as me, because I was like helping my mom pay bills and all of that. So it was definitely a lot. But fortunately, I became involved in SOAR, Society Organized Against Racism, my freshman year, joined exec, and therefore became part of BMSA, and the rest was history.
Hello everyone, it's me again. I would like to read, read uh, um, on on one story, and that's on one of our attendees have put. I understand that this, I understand that this meeting is about negative experiences as a student. However, I would like to highlight the negative experiences that the faculty and staff endure. We do not have a voice, and when we attempt to tell our stories, we run into the same red tape of 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 on of our policy and procedures that students do. I would like to call this out and tell the administration to stop this practice. Stop to listen to what that that person is telling you, as a person first, and as an employee or rep of the college. Secondly, we are here too on your campus, trying to be as one. Thank you for that story.
There's another story entry that we'd like to read. Someone wrote, my freshman year, one of the only students of color on our floor was students, athletes on the floor, members of the swim team, and it seemed like they were forming a nice relationship. November of their freshman year, they had a physical fight in the middle of the hallway after one of the swimmers called him, and I quote, a broke N-word. The student began to spiral after the altercation as the entire friend group dropped him, and he had a complete mental breakdown a few weeks later and was taken out of PC. Returned, he returned sophomore year and then again junior year, but I'm not sure if he was ever able to finish and graduate on time with us. I wish I could have done more to help him in his moment of need, but there was only so much I could do to help and hear his voice, his frustrations. It broke my heart to see what happened, and although I'm not sure the incidents were entirely related, I wouldn't be surprised if they were. All right, everybody. So as we are getting in more stories and such and just quickly reviewing them, I do want to start off, or actually kind of end, like, I want to actually kind of end things in a way. So the whole point of this conversation is to talk about the past, present, and the future. When we talk about the future, we know as BMXA exec and as current students of PC, we are very well aware of how institution administration works to a certain extent, of course. But we see it firsthand, the response and the action that it requires, especially the energy. The energy is the most important part. The energy that requires to create some sort of change, to create some sort of just little vibration that can actually cause something. So while we do reflect on what students, alumni, and many media outlets have shared, we have time to listen. Do you think, I mean, when I say we have time to listen, I don't mean we have time to work, you know? Students working through activism in the past, present, and now future have never stopped working. While we may be tired, we know this is more than a job. It has become a life through societal standards. Let's listen now. Let us see who is turning towards us to listen. Let us see who is also turning away from us when we are talking. Regardless, this event has shown me personally that we are a community, what we look like. And when I say what we look like, because I have blonde hair, y'all. I have blonde hair, a nose piercing. We all look different, okay? But what we look like does matter in this world, unfortunately. But it should not matter what we look like when we are here to receive higher education, a degree in higher education. So while our students and fire family, and I put that in quotes, because every family has its outsiders, right? While we are here to work and continuously doing what we're doing, because work does have to be done, we are talking for you all to listen. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that we are talking for others to listen. To our panelists today, your words, your wisdom, your experiences and actions have made it possible for us as current students and recent alumni to not hesitate to speak out. Thank you for your bravery, your strength, and your ability to come today to help make the path easier again. With that said, we have received a lot of questions in the comments and the Q&A section. Please feel free to continuously commenting and to ask us questions. We're gonna use this time now to really open it up and to just answer some of those questions. And we can definitely divide this up as an exec and just start answering what we know. Also, just due to timing, if questions are not answered, this is a forum. This is the last episode of IDEI's Anti-Summer Racist series. So with that said, most things will probably be posted on the IDEI website, Q&As included. Stories will not, but definitely questions that we will not be able to answer today, but definitely in the future will be posted certainly soon on the website. So if you all are curious, you can always go on, IDEI at Providence College website and access those. But for now, like I said, we're gonna try to answer some questions to the best of our ability, and then we'll close it off, and we'll have actually our own PC alumni, Nick Saylor, who works in IDEI, to close things off more formally. But yeah. So exec, I'm gonna ask, the first question we have is, what is the best way to deal with microaggressions from professors? Should they be addressed in that moment?
Did I say something on that one? Oh,
That's
good.
a great
Okay.
idea, please. That's a great idea. Let's have
So,
everyone answer it on panels.
So I get a lot of feedback from students in reference to something that's occurred in the classroom. And in some cases, the student is scared to death, comes in, they're not quite sure what they should say or what they should do. They may go through half a box of Kleenex, but we sit there and figure out what needs to come next. Some students are quicker in reference to reacting to professors in reference to something that's said, especially when, like I said, you're speaking for the entire nation of people that look like you or whatever else, stupid things like that, where sometimes I find I even will say, or I will have the dean of that particular student say, maybe we need to first start with one of us commenting to the professor to let them know that XYZ occurred in the class, and perhaps the professor might want to kind of address that with the entire course itself. Because sometimes people will realize they've said stupid stuff, and excuse my language for calling it that, but I got to call it something worse. And then they don't realize just the harmfulness that can happen with that. So I have spent a lot of time talking with faculty and letting them know such and such was said in a particular class, and I just wanted to give you a heads up because you might want to address that before the, and I know the student, I always encourage to go back and talk with that professor as well. And not everybody's comfortable being that assertive with someone who's in that particular role at that time. Sometimes they want to wait until after the course is over. Other times they don't want to address it at all. But so I tell them, you need to decide what you want to do about it and how much it's bothered you. And in some cases, we will hear a common theme in reference to some professors, and we end up having to bring that up regardless. My 2 cents.
I would definitely echo that. And there are times where I wish I spoke up about it, because sometimes a microaggression would go over my head, but I wouldn't realize it till an hour or two later. I'm like, oh, I should have said, I'm uncomfortable with how you're speaking to me. Could you please see if there is another way, or if we could talk, that would be amazing. Just because I think I'll definitely document it and just take a note of it. And if you can and you're comfortable enough to speak to the professor and see what else can go from there. The best way to combat it is have a conversation about it, because you can't address something unless you have a conversation about it, and you can't change somebody's mindset if you don't have a conversation about it.
One thing's for sure, professors or administrators or anybody else, they haven't got a degree yet out there for mind reading. And when they do, I'm going to be the first one to sign up for it. So some people live in their privilege and they're constantly saying or pontificating or whatever and don't realize sometimes they do, but not always. And that's the good news part of it. But it's a learning process just like anything else.
Thank you for sharing. And I do invite other panelists, Pedro and Adriel, like, please feel free to answer as well. The next question I have, it's a kind of a broad one. I'm hoping maybe we can kind of cut it down a little bit, but I know I personally even have an answer to this, or sort of a suggestion. How can we diversify a space that was never meant to be diverse? This one hit me, I'm not gonna lie. When I first came to PC, thank God I was lucky enough to really visit the college before I came. And I remember seeing the men in the white robes, and I was so confused. I've never seen that before. And I honor and respect the religion, of course. I was a self-identifying Catholic growing up my whole life. Don't ask me now. It is a journey. But regardless, how can we diversify space? I hate to say this, but in a way, I wonder, like, that's why I always wonder as myself. I wonder, am I just another number in the stat? Is this what my purpose is? Am I here because I am just adding on to the number? Am I making the percentage higher? Or am I here for something else? It's a two-way street, because I've seen people really reach out and have helped me grow, faculty and staff, students. I've had that support, and I'm very blessed enough to have that. But I've also seen it where I've had to search for that. I've had to navigate through my own space to really find those networks, because it was never just shown to me the day of. In a way, it's kind of like, are we meant to be here? Because if they're not available right away, are we truly meant to be here? Now, this is also me talking about, just 2 or 3 years ago, when in reality, now we have so many new organizations and so many new student-led clubs and programs that are benefiting students who, kind of count as that diverse quote, right? I don't know if that really answers that question. If anybody else wants to kind of tackle that, please do. But that's my point.
I would like to tackle that. Just to echo what some things that Joseph says are true, and also in addition to that is to listen, and not just to listen, just to hear the complaints, but just to listen in order to internalize it and also enact it. And that's goal for the administration and also for student leaders on campus in your on our respective clubs and respective orgs. In addition to that, we're talking about to hear out people of color. I apologize. My mom is texting me. Apologize for this. People of colors um, stories. Also listen to the people who have graduated. Like for instance, I have recently read one of our own graduates, Sarah 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 Jean Fresco article, and the title of that article is um an open letter to a higher education. Hashtag Black Lives Matter isn't just and a hashtag. I recommend everybody just to read it and also like um internalize it, or because she really goes like in depth into into how ways that like you shouldn't just be the one just to listen, or because it's a phase, or like just to listen, or because people are speaking, but or now we just listen, but like to internalize it, and also to enact it to make your institution a stronger and healthier one.
I'd say the way to make a space diverse that's not necessarily made for you to be diverse is to just take a seat and prop it in the middle of that room and be there and make them accept you. You know, I feel like if we wait for non-diverse students or people who aren't affected by racism to welcome you into the room, then that door is going to be closed forever. So open that door, kick it down, break it down, whatever you got to do. Put yourself in that seat, because y'all are just as capable as all those other students are. Y'all are just as capable as all the faculty and staff. So put yourself as a seat at that table, and then just show out, you know, show what you're capable of, and just kind of demand that space. Because like that question says, you know, a lot of us are constantly fighting that barrier, trying to like find our place at PC and find where we fit and find, you know, our comfort zone, you know, but we just gotta say we just gotta make our own sometimes, you know, we just gotta you know, put our stamp on it and be like, this is how we're gonna act here. We're gonna basically demand ourselves to be accepted here, because if without activism, you know, without that kind of like mindset, then again, if you just remain silent, or you remain quiet and just hope and wait and see, maybe this year PC won't do this to me, maybe like it's going to happen over and over again, you know. So collectively as a group, just put your chair at the seat of that table and say that we're here, because like you said, Joseph, like we're here, we're happy, we're proud, we're here. So just, you know, put your seat there and just do your thing.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm gonna say this is our last question. I definitely want to leave some time to just go over just future things that BMSA has planned, and just to kind of answer those questions, because we are getting a lot of like, so what are the future things? You know, what are the future purposes, right? This is actually a really interesting question, so I appreciate whoever asked this. Has anything actually gotten better on campus since Dean Ingram was a student, or has it actually gotten worse? And I'll leave that open.
I guess I'll speak on it. First and foremost, I'm more of a positive guy. We have made some strides. I would have to congratulate PC. Yeah, we as a fan, we have made some strides, but it's still room for improvement. I do not know, back in the 1970s, I wasn't born, but I did, I wasn't born back in those days.
I'm gonna pay for that one.
So I'll leave it on. I wasn't born in those days, but however, we did make some strides, but still room more. But I do remember that, like, hear about the demands that were made, and and what those students uh, have put on those demands. I believe it was 2015. People could correct me if I'm wrong. The year when the demands were made, and that's how more came to be. So we did have made some progress, but however, there is still more to go. PC still have find a little hard trouble just to listen, and not only just listen but to internalize. But I do have hope in our fire family that we will make that happen. And I'll turn over to Dean Ingram, which he's willing to speak.
The sooner we get a diversity office, so there's some consistency, I think the better, because a lot of history is getting lost. We had the Balfour Center for a while, and then that was disassembled and things were separated out into different offices, which is one of the reasons how the Multicultural Student Success Office ended up in our office, the Dean's office. So it's just constantly reacting to things instead of having some consistency. So I think the sooner we can get some stability in reference to having a center that's going to be dealing with this 24/7, better. We've increased the numbers, and that's all well and good to have bodies, but if you don't, I mean, it's just like it's a big hotel, but if you don't have enough rooms for all the people that are coming in for bedrooms and whatever, what good is it? So, you know, we've got to increase our ability to help students by having a center and the right folks that have some hard and fast tasks to be able to follow up on these things as soon as it happens. Something might happen to a student who's a sophomore or junior, and I may end up seeing them only because there's nobody else for them to talk with at that time. I mean, we need bodies to be able to be on task for that to happen. Take care of our students.
And I also want to mention that we piggybacking on what you guys said, we took strides on that physical aspect of creating more. I think it was, you know, I was in those years in 2016, 2017, where it flourished in that physical and that student, I guess, student movement and student affairs. But we really need to make a lot of strides in that educational component, because we are so far behind of having Black and Latino students and Asian students really are struggling behind our white counterparts. And that's something that really needs to be addressed, especially in the board of, you guys didn't know, but BMSC's president, and I was part of it, you go to the board of directors, and it's something that, like, I wish I could have spoken more about that, and I regret, you know, being in there in that power where you can, you know, relate to that we really need a change in that institutional aspect of education, because that curriculum is based on white supremacy, as every other curriculum in the whole country and then basically in the whole world. You know, it's meant for the status quo to be to get, you know, yeah, for that white status quo. And if it doesn't change, and if we don't have input from Black faculty, from Latino faculty, from marginalized faculty, from students who have really, you know, grown and who have experienced a lot of these issues, we won't be able to grow as in 100 years from now. You know, I was graduate in the graduating class of 100 years, and they would say, well, what's going to the next 100 years? And this Friar family, quote unquote, which I don't think I'm part of at some point, I still don't think I am, is how can we really reflect in that? And it's just strides in that educational aspect is really, it goes indebted into racism and white supremacy. And if we do not tackle that, we will not advance as a culture and as a campus. So.
If no one wants to tackle this question, and it's, you know what, it's a question that's we're going to be asking, and I pray everybody, I pray, Jolson is praying that when I hopefully come back for an alumni, it's more of how's everything been going rather than what can we do now. You know, I hope that question is never asked again when I'm an alumni and someone asks, so has it been worse since Jolson's been here, since BMSA of 2020 to 2021 has been here? I hope that question never gets asked again, but we can only hope, right? With this time now, I just want to again reiterate and just graciously thank our amazing panelists. They took the time out of their day, out of this whole world of whatever's happening, right? They took time out of that to really come into this conversation and share their stories, because it is not easy to share. As per, you know, students of color, as however you identify, it's not easy to always kind of really just put yourself on that raw line. So I really want to thank each and every one of the panelists that came here. I want to also thank our beautiful BMSA exec, our amazing supporters, our amazing clubs, especially our advisors, Dean Taiwo, Maggie, JP, they're all on this call. Anyone who came out tonight, and a huge thank you to IDEI for hosting the summer series and allowing students to really get on this call and, you know, share what we have to share what we've been saying, but really broadcast it, because it's through these, you know, these levels that we can really say and get our voices out there. So again, thank you everyone, and have a beautiful rest of the night.